Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal Boys and Girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand. Joining me, as always, over there in New York, blustery city, a gentleman by the name of Dan Rubenstein. Sir, Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Happy 2018! How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm a little tired, but I also have to say, Ty, as a longtime SEC supporter, die hard for the
noted
conference,
SEC supporter.
Just live, breathe, nap, dance, SEC, Ty. It's me, Mr. Southeastern Conference, and what a time it is to be a supporter of the region in general and cheering for the SEC. It's all so special for particularly me.
Some have said it even means more down there.
You don't know, as somebody who's on the outside, what exactly that means, because you're just a Yankee, Ty, who doesn't get the sort of the SEC fabric that is woven into my very being an SEC fan. It's the specialist time, Ty. It is the specialist.
Well, thank you to everyone out there for tuning in. Happy New Year. Happy 2018 to you and yours and wherever you may be. We got a bunch of bowl games that we need to get through this evening, not the least of which is the two semifinal games, all of the New Year's Six, and a bunch of other games. Gosh, I even lost count how many other ones we got to get through and at least say something about to give folks an idea for what's transpired here in bowl season. A quick update on the bowl pool, though. Before we jump in and talk about all things bowls.
Did I win?
No, I didn't win. You didn't win. But we had so many entries that the system will not tell us how many we have in the Solid Verbal group.
Damn, that's pretty good.
A literal overload of the ESPN circuits. We do have one gentleman who is at the top of our leaderboard titled Happy Holiday Bowl. He is tied for 13th overall among millions of entries. And then another entrant who is tied for 45th overall. But as a whole, the group doing very well. Seemed like there was a lot of support for bowl season. Let's get the right picks. Some tried, some failed, but nonetheless, it's been I think a really successful bowl season. I've enjoyed watching all these games.
100%.
The other bit of housekeeping that we do need to address here before we get into our full-throated discussion.
Good reference, Ty.
Yeah, especially on a day like today.
Mm-hmm.
The live show.
Yeah.
The live show tickets are officially back on sale.
Oh, not for very much longer.
Not for very much longer because they're going like hotcakes, but we put them on sale earlier today in the afternoon. There are a handful left. If you do want to get out there and buy them, I would suggest you do that now. If you don't have a chance to get them before they're sold out, there will be a wait list that appears. And sometimes as these things go, there might be tickets that come about a little bit later on in the process. If you sign up for the wait list, if there is an opening, you'll be notified.
Yeah.
You just got to be able to act on it in fairly short order. But we appreciate everyone's support. We're still building that show, still putting it together. Hopefully, I will be at full health for Saturday because we got a lot coming up on Saturday. But
what did Brian Kelly do to you, Ty?
Oh, God.
Were you fine before the Citrus Bowl?
I was fine. Well, no. It's been a rough go for me over the last week. I've broken the world record for Ricola cough drop consumption in like a 48-hour span.
They're pretty good. I just heard I don't know if it was the cough drops or if it's chapstick. You know the ones that have a lot of sensation? I don't know if it's with like the zinc or something like that, or chapstick that really you get that tingly sensation.
Yeah, right, with the menthol.
I've heard those are legitimately, not like in passing slang-wise, they are legitimately addictive.
Great.
Oh, and there's a new time, Ty. There's a new time for the live show.
Yes, talk to us about that, Dan. What's going on there?
So we were all set to go, 7 to 9. Great classic window of the evening on a Saturday night. You know, leaves you a little bit of time to eat beforehand, or you can eat a late dinner after, whatever. 7 to 9 felt so right to us, and, you know, we're going to go get drinks nearby after. And then the NFL went ahead and scheduled the local Atlanta Falcons professional football team, their playoff game, at 8:15, square in the middle. and anticipating that there may be crossover with locals that are interested, we moved up our show from 7 to 9 to 6 to 8. So doors are at 5:45 p.m. The show will begin promptly at 6 p.m. We've got all sorts of friends lined up to help out and participate and show up on the stage with us. So 6 to 8 p.m. is the new window. 6 p.m. is when the show begins, 5:45 doors. So we're trying to accommodate people who want to go and watch the Falcons game after. So here we are, 6 to 8.
6 to 8 is the new time. As you said, doors open at 5:45. Going to be a ton of fun. Still putting that show together. We don't want to let the lid off it quite yet, but I think it's got some real good potential. I'm pretty excited about this one, Dan. I'm not going to lie.
It's a mixed media experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
On that note, Dan, shall we get to the playoffs?
Let's.
I'm going to play the sound. I can't do my normal bit today. My voice is really struggling.
I'll do it for you. Breaking news.
Beep, 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 beep.
Okay. There. Wow, you are a struggle, but you know what you are right now? You kind of seem like the Clemson offense.
A little
like
bit.
You're here. You've shown up. You're present. Your uniform is on. Your microphone is in front of you. But man, the universe is not on your side right now.
Let's start with the Rose Bowl, shall we?
Okay, let's do that. Happiness.
Georgia 54, Oklahoma 48, double overtime, Dan. What did we say about this game?
This is you, Ty. I mean, I may have agreed with you and said that you made sense in your prediction, but you hit the rhythm of this game on the nose.
Well, we had a joint prediction.
Yes.
To start this game out, and Verballer Alley rightfully pointed it out on Twitter. In fairness, we would have forgotten about it had she not pointed it out, but
oh yeah.
We had this little back and forth on the preview show where I said to you, hey, if Oklahoma goes out there and scores on 3 plays and 80 yards on their opening possession, would that surprise you? And you said a little bit, but 6 plays, 80 yards, that seems about right.
Right.
Lo and
That's
behold,
true. We did combine.
Yeah, lo and behold, Oklahoma's opening drive, 6 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. Oklahoma races out to a 7-0 lead, then 21-7, then 31-14. It looked like this game could get out of hand in a hurry. But then, one of those moments where you wonder to yourself in the back of your mind, try not to see boogeymen if they're not there, but just kind of wondering, like, so if Oklahoma tries to squib a kick here, and let's just say the up man for Georgia catches it, after one play, they get into enough field goal range for Rodrigo Blankenship.
Yes.
Always looks like he's incognito. He hits a 55-yard field goal at the end of the first half, gives them a little bit of momentum going into halftime. The big question was still, how are they going to stop Oklahoma and their offense in the second half? But a little moment like that in a big game like this sometimes tends to turn the tide in favor of the team that's losing. And I think that was very much the case in the Rose Bowl.
Oh, for sure. 100%. It sort of it gave them a little bit of juice. And this was a Georgia team, mind you, even though they were down 31-14, they were averaging at this point something like 14 or 15 yards per carry. It was some ridiculous number because of the long runs from Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. So there had to be a certain degree of confidence that if we just calm down, hand the ball off to our incredibly talented running backs, trust our defense. The defense obviously tightened up in the second half. Baker Mayfield missed more throws than he did in the first half and the second. There had to have been a sense of our offensive line is dominating Oklahoma up front. They are pushing around the Sooners, and let's just trust the obvious talent on the field. And Jake Fromm was fine, but Jake Fromm is not what makes this offense go. And going into the second half, and especially for a second-year coach, and Kirby Smart has coached in a number of enormous games, obviously, it was good to see a calm, composed Georgia team not let Oklahoma take this game out of control, and just fully snap into place. And that's what Georgia did. And they hung around enough to the point where they tied it with how much time left? Under a minute. They tie the game with under a minute left. They take it to overtime. There was the block field goal that ultimately didn't matter because Sony Michel ran it in, I think, on the second play, and that was that. So that's strong coaching. That is confidence from Georgia. And unfortunately for Oklahoma, just missing too much on defense, and Baker Mayfield probably wants 3 to 5 throws back.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a really good point. Georgia never went into panic mode.
No.
It really wasn't a case where their offense wasn't working. It's just in the first half, Oklahoma's offense was working a lot better. And so what happens? They come out in the second half, they stick to the plan. They keep feeding Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, both of whom, by the way, had monster days on the ground. Georgia as a team rushed for, 317 yards?
Yeah, over 10 yards a carry, and both Chubb
over
and
9
Michel
carries, something incredible. The truth of the matter is that Oklahoma didn't play a team like Georgia all year. We talked about it on the preview.
Right.
And maybe that's a big part of why we were so interested in it. But Kirby Smart knew that going into the second half. He knew that he still had an advantage, still had a game plan that he could execute. One of the things that I did want to point out as well, I don't know, and I tweeted out about this, and apparently it was trending in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
I saw that.
But the coach's film room on ESPN News, as you know, they do these alternate broadcasts on the ESPN family of networks during these championship games. And on ESPN News, they had the coach's film room.
Yes.
They had a bunch of coaches in there. And Gary Patterson was one of them, who, of course, played Oklahoma twice this year and played Kirby Smart last year in the Liberty Bowl. And they asked him, they said, what would you do if you were Kirby Smart here? Because Oklahoma, they're running, they're throwing all over you. And he said, well, I'd make sure I took something away in the second half. And by that, he said, you either overcommit to the run or you overcommit to the pass, but you take something away from Oklahoma and see if you can take them out of rhythm.
Yes.
And just like everything else that Gary Patterson said on the broadcast, it was incredible. But just like that, it happened. Georgia put more guys in the box. They played more man. And Oklahoma's second half offense wasn't nearly as successful.
Yeah, they were going horizontal a little bit too much. There were a couple of big drops. There were a couple of overthrows. The rhythm completely fell off when it seemed like, because Rodney Anderson was running well, that they could have sort of added wrinkles and not necessarily relied on too much in the way of stretching a very fast and angry Georgia defense horizontally. And it ended up costing them 2 or 3 drives, and ultimately was the difference, I think, for Oklahoma. And Georgia, as just great teams do, took advantage.
And then, of course, you had the fireworks in the second half.
Yes.
46-yard fumble return. Oklahoma takes the lead. Late touchdown run, ties the game. 55 seconds left for Georgia. Dueling field goals in overtime. A blocked field goal for Georgia in double OT, followed by a quick 27-yard scamper by Sony Michel to win the game. They go on to win this game. I guess we'll call it a shootout.
Oh, yeah.
54-48. An instant classic, just as we predicted here on the Solid Verbal.
And the least likely way going into the game that we would anticipate Georgia winning, right?
Absolutely.
Going into the game, it was sort of an idea of, well, Georgia has the more talented defense. They have, played a more difficult schedule recently, and having to play against Auburn, and it just prepared to impose their will, I think, a little bit more because of how stolid they are on both sides of the ball. And for them to come out and not just, Georgia could have smothered them 24-10, and everybody would have said, yeah, that's about right. They won the SEC that way. They're winning this way against a really good offense that way. But to win 54-48, I think shows a versatility that we hadn't fully seen from the Bulldogs, which sets them up very nicely for their opponent, perhaps.
Speaking of their opponent, let's go on over to the Sugar Bowl, the later game. Alabama 24, Clemson 6. Daniel.
Yes.
I'm just preparing the meat.
That tenderizes it.
That tenderizes it in a big way. Yeah!
Somewhere in the Webster's New World Dictionary, under the term crockpotting, the slang term crockpotting, they'll just have a video, a link to a YouTube video of this game.
it wasn't even it was like a defensive crockpotting more than anything, because it wasn't just slow touchdown, let a team hang around, another slow touchdown. Alabama had one actual in earnest touchdown drive that ended with a Calvin Ridley catch, after Jalen Hurts extended the play. But the Deron Payne, after he picked the ball off, that was a short field. And then Mac Wilson had a pick six. And by the way, somebody tweeted me the term for when a defensive lineman runs it in an interception as a thick six. And one, makes me uncomfortable saying it out loud. I'm going to be real honest with everybody right now. Two, that's brilliant. And I don't know if he came up with it. I don't know whoever came up with it is a very smart and funny person, but
that's good.
Yes, Alabama's defense did more in this game to just stomp out anything that Clemson tried than I think even we expected. And that's, everybody has high expectations for Alabama's defense, but this is a Clemson offense that has moved the ball consistently all season long. Not the most explosive, but efficiently. They've run really well with a couple of top running backs. Kelly Bryant has looked very good at times, and it just looked like they were throwing into a void. It really did.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time with Alabama. If Bama and their defense can play two high safeties and still shut down your running game, still get pressure on your quarterback, it's basically over, right? I'm not going to delve too deeply into what that means schematically, but let's just say in layman terms, it means that Bama can play a defense where it's not taking many chances and still able to shut down an opponent. And that's essentially what happened against Clemson. It's been a constant for Nick Saban in Alabama over the years that he's been with them at the helm. And look at the numbers. That's essentially what happened.
Oh, yeah.
188 total yards for Clemson's offense. A pretty good offense, I'll add.
Yeah.
Kelly Bryant, 3.4 yards per attempt through two picks.
My God. Couldn't
get anything going on the ground. And 19 carries for, I think, 19 yards.
That's with a 20-yard run, Ty.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was rough to watch Clemson. It was like Clemson was down in age level, watching like a youth sports. Like, should they be on the same? Is this right? Are we on the right field? And Alabama, and it wasn't even an attacking Alabama defense. They weren't sending a ton of pressure. As you mentioned, they have two high safeties. It was just reading and reacting, just saying, we know exactly the spot you're trying to throw to or run to. They looked so prepared. They won what seemed like every one-on-one matchup on defense. And listen, Jalen Hurts didn't have a good game. He was accurate enough, but he didn't throw the ball downfield with any sort of consistency. This was not like a complete performance from Alabama. Again, one true offensive touchdown drive. It was not, a display of offense here for the Tide, but man, that defense is now, it is the best thing in the national championship game.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm excited about this national championship game, but it is very clear that these are the two best and most deserving teams. And I'll have a UCF conversation, and we can have that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Just in seeing the number of ways that Georgia was able to eventually take it to Oklahoma, and what Alabama's defense was able to do to this Clemson team, and whether a very good Clemson defense themselves, these are the best two teams.
At one point early in the game, too, Clemson's average starting field position was something like its own 17-yard line.
Yeah.
And Bama's was the 41-yard line. I didn't see the final number. I'm sure it changed, but certainly not enough to tilt things in Clemson's favor. It felt like they had their backs to the wall the entire game. That's not really a good spot to be in. And ultimately, Bama does what Bama does. They change the game with some big defensive plays. They get some turnovers. That's just what they do.
They didn't have to show a lot because they were so prepared.
24-6, your final score in the Sugar Bowl, which means that we've got Alabama, Georgia, an all SEC contest on Monday, January 8th in the College Football Playoff National Championship game.
Yes.
Bama has been installed as a 4.5-point favorite. Your over-under is at 45.5, so sort of like an NFL game.
Yeah, and let's also celebrate the fact that Deron Payne was in this game and
terrific.
Ridiculous force. I don't know how, as somebody on the Piesman board, I don't know how we treat a postseason extremely great Piesman moment when it's between seasons. To have the combination of a pick and then a catch and sort of tiptoe in the front corner of the end zone, what a wonderful, wonderful part of an otherwise not great offensive game.
Indeed.
Are you excited for next Monday's game? Like in terms of pure, and I'm not even talking about narrative wise necessarily with, Jake Fromm is a true freshman. Can Jalen Hurts sort of avenge his performance? A very good performance, mind you, last year in a loss with a new offensive coordinator, with Georgia hiring Kirby Smart and Alabama. And just, is there from a pure football perspective, and we're going to preview this game later in the week, both ourselves and with some pals. Are you excited? And I don't want to be leading with that question because it's totally okay to be excited, I should add.
I'll say this. I think the storylines surrounding the game are more amusing, more interesting than the actual football game.
Yeah.
I think out on the field, unless you're really into a defensive slugfest, smash mouth football, honestly, if you're not watching the coach's film room next Monday night, you're probably missing out, because I think you'll get more action watching that feed than you would by watching Fowler and Herbstreit.
There's a certain amount of excitement that's lost in watching the coach's feed, and there's a certain amount of knowledge that's gained watching it, and just a perspective, a viewpoint that you wouldn't have otherwise hearing from Gary Patterson or Dino Babers or Larry Fedora or whatever. But I think I will still opt for the energy of the actual broadcast, just because I anticipate it being pretty close, and honestly, the football not generating a ton, especially the offense not generating a ton of energy. I don't know that Jake Fromm is somebody that excites me in the same way that Deshaun Watson or Chad Kelly or Johnny Manziel, guys who have had success against Alabama's defense in recent years. And listen, we've probably been wrong about Jake Fromm a baker's dozen, so many times this year that we're like, well, he's a true freshman, but he's kind of not at this point. He's played whatever it is, 12, 13 games, started 12 or 13 games since that Notre Dame game. And will he have the stones to sort of throw down the middle on 3rd and 15 against this Alabama defense? I think so. Yeah. I'm curious to see what his game is like, because Alabama is clearly going to force Jake Fromm at times to beat them. But I really do lean on quarterback play as the biggest thing to get me excited about a matchup. And Jalen Hurts and Jake Fromm, just compared to where we've been these past few years, it's I'm going to need to be talked into it a little bit, I think. Yeah,
and I mean, ultimately, we'll talk ourselves into it. It's college football.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited from the standpoint that Georgia hasn't been in this game in a long time.
Sure, absolutely. And it's a sort of de facto home game. De
facto home game. I'm excited for Georgia. I'm excited for their fan base. And I think if you're Georgia, the team that you want to play is Alabama. Not because they're the easier of the two opponents you could have played, but just because if you win, you could say, wow, we beat Alabama.
Yeah.
What a charmed season we had. So I will talk myself into it as well. I'll tell you this, I'm more excited about this game between two SEC teams than I was Alabama LSU Part 2.
I think that's fair. That was 9-6 overtime.
Yeah.
And this is not a rerun. Alabama Georgia didn't happen during the regular season. How do you feel about that in general? Not to get too issue big picture, and we have a lot of bowl games to get through, but the fact that we have two SEC teams, I mean, we knew it was a possibility with two teams in the playoff. Now that we are going into this game where we have this hyper-regional matchup of the clear two best teams.
Yeah.
Is this capital G good for college football, for TV, for your brain?
I think is this good is the wrong question. And I hate to reframe it on you, but this is the way a playoff works. The best team wins.
Yeah.
And
you're not wrong.
Unlike the old BCS system or the old traditional bowl system where people voted their favorites into a particular game, this is what happens. The best team wins. You don't have control over which region wins out. And in this case, the SEC has two teams in it. They made it through. So, I don't care if it's good, quite honestly. The best two teams won. I think it'll be a hell of a fight on Monday night, a defensive-oriented game. And, we'll see who comes out the victor.
I think I mostly agree with you. At a certain point, when people talk about needing to win their conference or be in their conference championship, it's a little funny to me that Georgia had to play an extra game and Alabama didn't, but that's the sport that we talk about, this ridiculous pastime. But there's a slight disappointment to me. Not that these are the two teams in it because I want the best two teams. Just that it's not more representative, the national part of national championship.
Yeah.
Like, it's disappointing to me that USC or Washington or Oklahoma or Ohio State wasn't a little bit better, wasn't a little bit more consistent, didn't get better quarterback play through the course of the season, because I really do think there's something special about, like, Midwest, South, Southwest, West, Southeast. There is, if we had that sort of matchup, there is something intrinsically, to my mind, more attractive about it. But these are the best two teams. I can't actually complain. This is just sort of like in a perfect world type complaint.
We've had two teams play for a national championship from the same basketball conference before.
Yeah.
And it's not always the most exciting matchup, Dan, but that's just sort of the way the cookie crumbles. Let's get to the other New Year's Six games. As you said, we're going to preview the championship on Friday when our next podcast drops. Let's talk about the Cotton Bowl Classic, shall we?
Oh, I'd love to.
Ohio State 24, USC 7, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it was clear that Ohio State was a better team here. Is that fair?
I would say so, yeah.
4 turnovers for USC, 3 of which led to 21, I think, of Ohio State's 24 points. Good game for JT Barrett. He broke some records from Drew Brees.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Darnold, for his part, put up good numbers in the game. And I thought he showed a lot about what he's all about. The good and the bad, really.
Yeah.
High character kid, great teammate, great talent, but has to develop a little bit with those second and third reads. He's just not there yet. It probably would benefit him greatly to stay in school another year. But what was your takeaway from this game?
USC can out-talent pretty much everybody on their schedule. It's very difficult to out-talent Ohio State. And the offensive line was completely overwhelmed. Sam Darnold was able to make plays all season long, escaping the grasp of defensive linemen. It's a different story with Sam Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis and, Nick Bosa, all these types of talents where you actually have to be consistently and fundamentally sound to beat a front that good. And USC's offensive line was mostly not up to the challenge. And I was so happy that I was flying during the big chunk of this game from Chicago back to New York. I was thrilled that I only had to watch the first half. I was thrilled because it seemed like, and I don't know if you're a poker player, I'm definitely not, but I know there is a move where if you just keep playing and nobody's winning, that at a certain point you like split a pot. You just call it. That's what it seemed like the offenses did in the second half. We're just like, you know what? Why don't we just agree to disagree about offense and move forward? It's 24/7. Let's go our own separate ways. And just a fantastic defensive year outside of that Iowa game and maybe the Oklahoma game for Ohio State. All the talent in the world up front, and they showed it against USC. And I imagine if Sam Darnold comes back, there will be, all aboard. The hype train will continue for USC right up until they have to play a team, that can expose a lot of their weakness.
A very good season for Ohio State. Fell just short of the playoff, but I think they went out very strongly here, especially for JT Barrett, who had an illustrious career at Ohio State. So they win, going away by a 24-7 final. In the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, another triumph for the Big Ten. It was a big bowl season for the Big Ten. They went 7-1. Michigan was the only loss. Penn State beats Washington in a really fun game, I thought. 35-28. Trace McSorley, I thought, was the big story.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was talking about
100%.
Saquon, and rightfully so. He had 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, and looked every bit as good as advertised if you hadn't seen him previously. Trace McSorley, in the words of tight end Hans Gesicki, was, quote, literally perfect on third downs. 12 for 12 passing, 193 through the air, and 2 touchdowns.
He was unconscious. It was, if we'll stay with the, and it's not fair to stay with the casino theme with poker, but, he's at a table and everything is just going his way. He keeps rolling sevens, and it wasn't a luck thing with him.
Can you roll sevens in poker? I didn't know that.
No, not in poker, in a casino.
Okay.
There was just Trace McSorley on third down, just honed in. And I don't know what the final Penn State looks like. It says 13 of 17 on third down. That's absurd in any game, in any situation, against any team. to do it against a very good Washington defense, which, by the way, I think you tweeted out after Saquon's long run, it was like vaunted Washington defense, huh?
Yep.
Something along those lines. So it was 28-7 at that point.
And then they forced like 3 turnovers after that.
From that point on, I think it was 21-7 Washington.
Yeah, don't think I wasn't biting my lip a little bit watching that game.
Yeah, it was. The timing was. I was ready if Washington had tied it and sent it because they were close. Dante Pettis threw an interception, lateral something on that final play. It would have been 28-7 and then 28-7. It would have been wonderful. Your tweet interrupting the story of 2
You always
games.
take a chance with stuff like that.
True. Yeah. But no, and especially no Joe Moorhead. I know Washington was down offensive coaches as well, but no Joe Moorhead for Trace McSorley to look so confident early on. That early script for Penn State was fantastic. Deshaun Hamilton was all over the place, was, sort of unguardable for chunks of this game. I was super impressed with the way Penn State finished out this season. I know this might be a what could have been type scenario for Penn State fans, but not insignificant to win 11 games and finish as a top 10 team. It was a mostly great year for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, and they lose Saquon and they lose some key members of their defense. But I think by and large, Penn State should again be in pretty good position next year because Trace is coming back. They get a lot of their offensive line back. I think the bones are in place to continue on what they've done the last 2 seasons. And Ricky Ronnie, their new offensive coordinator, with the exception of a lot of shuffle passes, which I didn't fully understand.
That was strange.
Didn't fully get that. But with the exception of that, I thought he showed a nice proclivity to go for the throat, to carry over a lot of the same concepts that we saw under Joe Moorhead. So I'm very encouraged about where this team goes now moving forward.
And he's not just interim. He was promoted.
Promoted from within, correct.
Promoted from within. Next year, schedule looks pretty fantastic.
It's not
honestly.
bad. Most of the tough games are at home.
Yeah, the tough games are at home. It's App State, at Pitt, Kent State. It's not good. At Illinois. Here are the Big Ten road games. At Illinois, at Indiana, at Michigan, at Rutgers.
Yeah.
All things considered, you'd take that if you're Penn State.
That's workable, for sure.
Yeah.
Penn State wins 35-28 over Washington in the Fiesta Bowl. Capital One Orange Bowl, Dan. Wisconsin 34, Miami 27. I think I've made it pretty well known that I am not very horny for Alex Hornibrook.
Well, I've got some surprising and shocking news for your loins, Ty. He was real good. 4
touchdown passes for Alex Hornibrook, 258 yards in a big game, sort of a road game, all things considered, given the fact that it was played on Miami's home field.
Yeah.
A great effort from him. He wasn't always as responsible with the ball this season, but
no, especially against a defense as fast and turnover happy as Miami's.
Yeah, but what can you say? He had a great performance in this game. He propels Wisconsin to victory here. Another triumph for the Big Ten. Wisconsin held the ball for almost 40 minutes. They made Malik Rozier force balls into coverage, which had predictable results, 3 interceptions for him. And, Wisconsin, again, relies on its defense to help spin things in their favor, and then they get a really good game out of Hornibrook.
Yeah, I imagine Malik Rozier looking into the Wisconsin secondary and just pass defense in general, probably saw 15 guys back there.
Yeah.
Like that, there were just so many Wisconsin jerseys swarming to the ball in every lane. And again, a sort of tribute to the job that, and it's not just Jim Leonard, but Jim Leonard this season and the job, Justin Wilcox did before him and Dave Aranda did before that. The continuity of just very good defenses in Madison has been incredibly impressive. And Jonathan Taylor, tailback, going for damn near 2,000 yards as a true freshman.
Yeah.
Just a ridiculous year from Wisconsin, and obviously Miami playing through a number of key injuries on offense. But it was a game. This was 27-24
I know.
In the fourth quarter. It was still a game with everything
close.
Miami struggled with on offense. Yeah. And yet, good for Wisconsin for holding on. They finished the season, 13-1? The schedule is, yes, the schedule, but still stupid, ridiculous.
A nice win for them to close out the year. All right. Let's talk about the Peach Bowl.
Yeah.
UCF wins over Auburn 34-27, Dan. You watch this game at all?
I did.
What do you think of this game?
I thought, aside from the obvious, it being like an unreal season for UCF and to go out with a win over the team that beat both teams in the national championship, it was impressive to see the Knights stand up on really defense more than anything. It was nothing too new that UCF was going to put yardage on good teams, even though Auburn's defense is on a talent level above what UCF is used to. But Mackenzie Milton has been very good all year. The fact that he led the way.
He is fun as hell to watch, Dan.
He is so fun.
He is so fun.
But yeah, defensively, to force the turnovers they did, to they themselves overwhelm the Auburn offensive line, which we thought after the Clemson game had really gotten itself together, but they seemed to struggle for long stretches, maybe outside of the third quarter for Auburn, was very cool to see. Mackenzie Milton spread the ball around nicely, and ultimately the turnovers forced Auburn's hand, and Auburn was in the game late, but UCF did a great job holding on and closing the game out.
Would UCF have beaten any of the 4 playoff teams?
Yeah, I think so. I think UCF, I don't know if it's 7 out of 10 times, but I think if things break correctly and with the time to prepare that UCF would have to have 3 weeks with, the Scott Frost coaching staff, I think it's for Auburn and their defense to struggle at times with Mackenzie Milton. And it wasn't like Traquan Smith was getting behind the secondary consistently or Dredrick Snelson was working them over. It was just smart play calling, timely defense, and that's good enough. I don't think they probably beat Alabama, but could they run with Oklahoma? Could they run with Georgia a little bit? Could they run with Clemson and take advantage of some bad Kelly Bryant throws? Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
I think they could have given all 4 of those teams at a minimum 2.5 tough quarters. I don't know about, the final 22.5 minutes, but I'm pretty confident that 2.5 quarters is something that they could muster up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to force turnovers and flip fields and make smart decisions on third down, you can hang with anybody for a good amount of time. It's tough, though, when this is, what is it, the Peach Bowl?
No.
And a disappointing spot for Auburn. They win the SEC and they're into the playoff. So I am not going to place this on Auburn motivation because Auburn looked plenty motivated. But the fact is, the stakes are a little bit different.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So Auburn in a playoff, Georgia in a playoff, Clemson in a playoff. It's just, there's a different feel and a different level of focus, I think, from everybody involved. And that would include UCF. So really cool to see UCF win. And the real shame of everything was that UCF was never even in the conversation. Like the committee did, they made a conscious effort to say, yeah, you're like 16. Oh, yeah, you're 11. No, you're like 13. You're like 15. You're not 7 because they're just protecting themselves in case there is crazy chaos,
right?
Protecting themselves from having UCF anywhere near a playoff conversation. And that's the shame of it because UCF should be in that conversation. I know they didn't play a ton of Power 5 teams, but to have the opportunity to prove themselves feels, especially given the results from yesterday and even before yesterday, they were on a level playing field. Players are players, and they had them.
34-27 again was your final. A big win for UCF. Beware the de facto national championship. I said it for 10 years on this show, but the game was a big deal for UCF, and they got the job done. So, congrats.
And how many of these schools, by the way, Ty, have claimed national championships in the exact way that UCF could today? There are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. So, good for UCF. That's all.
The other game that we'll bring up here, it's not technically a New Year's 6, but they did play it on New Year's Day. Mm-hmm. The Citrus Bowl. We had Notre Dame 21, LSU 17, Dan.
I have a confession, Ty.
Yeah.
I barely watched this game.
No.
I was with Michigan people, and listen, the Michigan game could have been worse. The Michigan game was horrific to watch, Ty. I just had to pick my poison, and I went with the one that featured Ryan Nanny in a giant fried onion costume.
Right. No, of course. We'll talk about that one next here.
Yes.
And in fairness, I think that game, at least the first half of the Citrus Bowl, was worse than anything we saw in the Outback Bowl.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
The first half was just dreadful, but an interesting situation for Notre Dame to win this football game. They had a lot of backups in. They were playing Ian Book mostly at quarterback. He gets a big throw, a great catch from Miles Boykin late in the game, catches it one hand over his back shoulder, dodges 2 tacklers, scampers in for a touchdown. And Notre Dame ends up winning this one by 4. a nice little boost to kind of go into their own offseason where they've clearly got a lot of questions to answer, not the least of which is who's playing quarterback next year. Now, if you look at the box score, you're going to see a lot of Ian Book. I don't know if you should read too deeply into what that means for next year. Brandon Wimbush has been nicked up down the stretch here a little bit. What I will say, though, is if you are Brandon Wimbush, to go into that bowl game and perform the way you did, it was definitely not the kind of curtain call you want to close out your year. Like, if you were looking to separate yourself from Ian Book, from Phil Jerkovic, who's coming in, this was not the way to go about doing that. So I would expect there to be an open competition for quarterback. I am encouraged by how Notre Dame looked on defense. Okay. I think they're young enough, and depending on who stays and who goes, we could be talking about one of the better front sevens in college football next year. So they've made great strides on that side of the football as well. Offense, we're going to have to wait and see. I think just as a whole, a really good, surprising way, quite frankly, to close out their season. A big win against LSU.
Let me write this down real quick. Off-season Notre Dame quarterback.
Yeah, no, it's been the thing, man.
Woo! And I guess, yeah, it'll depend on who stays and who goes. I guess, does Jerry Tillery need to take it one step at a time? Is that a goof? Does that work? No?
Sure.
Is that still fresh in people's minds?
You can do that.
Okay. Yeah, good for Notre Dame for holding on. It was a very standard loss for LSU where they seemed to put themselves in position to score a bunch and couldn't finish drives, and the standard issue disappointment for LSU is nothing any football fan wants to see. It's not fun to watch. And, Darius Geis was fine, but man, just not a fun game. Not a fun game. I watched some of the highlights of this, and I'm going to tell you right now, Ty, pretty glad I didn't watch.
All right. We've got 15 other bowl games that we need to talk about.
So many.
And we're already 45 minutes deep. So if it's okay with you, my voice is, you can hear it. It's dying here, Dan.
True.
Let's dying embers of my sweet, sweet radio voice here. Mm-hmm. Let's try and move through these as quickly as we can, if that's all the same to you.
Yes, let's.
Tell me about the Outback Bowl. South Carolina 26, Michigan 19.
Speaking of standard issue offensive disappointment, Michigan struggled, kept giving the ball to South Carolina. South Carolina barely holds on to win with 5 turnovers gifted to them. And Michigan has a lot of soul-searching and mirror-looking offensively this offseason, especially with Shea Patterson coming in. But hey, good for South Carolina. Did nothing in the first half, good in the second half. And Ryan Nanny wore a fried onion costume.
Awesome.
On the sideline.
That was awesome. Also, I saw that the game was a little chippier than I'd expect.
It was. Well, they were like fighting in a bowling alley leading up to the game. So there's some sparks flying, Ty.
Quinn Nordine, the kicker, went crotch grab after hitting a field goal at the end of the first half.
Yeah, I mean, you hit 3 field goals in a half and nobody else is doing anything around you offensively. You feel empowered, Ty.
All right, Michigan is the only Big Ten team to lose. South Carolina, nice win for them. Tax Slayer Bowl. Mississippi State 31, Louisville 27. Props to Mississippi State here, Dan.
Sure.
They got the best of Lamar Jackson, didn't they?
They absolutely did. He is once again trying to do everything, which I understand given some of their struggles on offense. But to me, the story was much more Keaton Thompson, interim coach for Mississippi State, not starting the Joe Moorhead era quite yet, obviously in game, and Keaton Thompson both through the air and on the ground leads the Dogs to a very impressive win. Good for them.
In the Liberty Bowl, Iowa State 21, Memphis 20. We had one final swan song for our boy, the Duke of Hazzard, Allen Lazard, a Liberty Bowl record, 10 grabs, 142 yards. He was virtually uncoverable, even really on being one leg after tweaking an ankle earlier in the game. Iowa State gets their first bowl win since 2009.
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable season for Iowa State. One of the better stories of the season. Couldn't really run against Memphis, but really it was the defense. Joel Lanning, another big game for the Clones. And Allen Lazard is right there. I don't know. Allen Lazard is a candidate. N'Keal Harry, a candidate for, well, they got one really, really good receiver, and he keeps getting open. If it's the Tyler Lockett, the Eric Decker Award, whatever it is, Allen Lazard is right there.
The Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl goes to New Mexico State, 26-20 over Utah State in overtime.
Historic bowl win for the Aggies. Cool to see.
The Belk Bowl, Wake Forest 55, Texas A&M 52. 400 yards, 4 touchdowns for John Wolford. We had one final ride on the Wolford wagon as Wake Forest goes out in style. A nice win. Nice offensive showing here by Wolford to close out the season.
Yeah, same goes for Nick Starkel, and it was, Christian Kirk's final game for Texas A&M. He declared for the draft. But yeah, in John Wolford's final game for the Deacs, he was, once again, stupid good. And just the defense was not there for anybody, but Wake held on late against Nick Starkel. I think they forced a 4th and long and got the stop. Good for Wake. Another, 8-win season?
Yeah.
Come on, that's wonderful.
I'm going to make a random prediction here about John Wolford.
Okay.
John Wolford is the kind of guy who 4 years from now is randomly the backup for the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
And due to injury gets a start, 2 starts, maybe 3.
Sort of like the Graham Harrell style.
Exactly.
Okay.
Nate Peterman, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
The Hyundai Sun Bowl goes to NC State by a 52-31 margin over ASU.
Coached by Todd Graham.
Yeah, weird.
A little bit strange. Lame duck situation. Herm Edwards now officially takes over in all phases for ASU. Rough game for Manny Wilkins. Ridiculous game for Ryan Finley, as he was mostly this year. Little down back half of the season, but NC State, a really cool way to end the year that they probably thought they should have double-digit wins in.
The Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl goes to Northwestern by 1, 24-23 over Kentucky. Yeah, what happened in this game?
Clayton Thorson goes down with a pretty ugly injury. Hope he is able to eventually heal. Looked pretty brutal. And then Benny Snell, star Kentucky running back, sort of waves off a ref who was trying to help him up or something like that. And the ref is insulted. It's unclear. There was not any sort of significant contact. He gets thrown out of the game.
Yeah.
Very strange. Kentucky comes back and give themselves an opportunity to win the game with a 2-point conversion, but Northwestern breaks it up and holds on and helps to keep the Big Ten's bowl record up pretty high.
The Military Bowl presented by Northrop Grumman. We had Navy. Wow. Is that right?
Woo! That is 100% correct.
A 42-point win over Virginia. That's incredible.
That is... Yeah, I did not see this game coming in this fashion. Zach Abey had a nice day on the ground, and Navy did what Navy did and added a bunch of defense to it. So, hey, Navy, 7-6. Good for you.
The Camping World Bowl goes to Oklahoma State, 30-21 over Virginia Tech.
Not a surprise.
No, not a surprise.
Oklahoma State with a huge offensive day for Mason Rudolph and a couple of receivers. And Virginia Tech ultimately just couldn't make plays at the end of the game. Too many stall drives.
The San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl. Another lopsided game here. Wow.
Woof.
Michigan State 42, Wazoo 17. No Luke Falk in this game for Wazoo?
Yeah, no Hercules Montaafa for the first half because he was ejected against, I want to say it was in the Apple Cup, so he had to miss the first half of the bowl game. And Brian Lewerke, huge day for Michigan State. Tyler Helinski not able to keep up. And yeah, Michigan State, you'll remember when we previewed this team and knew nothing about what would happen this year, you were confident they would improve. They finished 10-3.
Yeah, wow.
Damn, Michigan State. Damn.
The Alamo Bowl, TCU 39, Stanford 37, Dan. Looked like this one might get out of hand. Stanford had a big lead after a quarter and a half, I guess. But that's when a hero came along, Dan, with the strength to carry on. You might know him as Kenny Hill. This was decidedly Ken Hill.
Yep.
In this football game. The older, the more mature version of his former self. He led the charge all the way back, had a 93-yard touchdown pass to start the fourth quarter. Wild game in the Alamo Dome. Cole Bunce for TCU gets a 33-yarder with 3 minutes left to give TCU a big bowl win.
Yes, absolutely. Not a ton of big plays for Stanford. Bryce Love had a couple, but was mostly held in check by a very good TCU Rushdie up front. Jalen Reagor, obviously a huge day for the Frogs in the air. And if you like interceptions, Ty, my God, do you have to dine out at the Alamo Bowl? Because there were 4 of them. And the field kept flipping and flopping, and it was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed my time with Stanford and TCU.
The Academy Sports and Outdoors Texas Bowl, it's a mouthful, goes to Texas, 33-16 over Missouri.
Chippy game.
Yeah.
Chippy game between Texas and Mizzou, but hey, good for Texas. Didn't really do a ton offensively, but this is the 2017 Texas team. That's what they don't do.
Yeah.
And defensively did a really nice job against Drew Lock, mostly held him in check. Ish Witter did not much at all, surprisingly enough. I mean, I guess not a big surprise. Texas defense has been mostly very good this year. So strong way for Texas to finish out the year, but they should be closer to double-digit wins moving forward.
Malik Jefferson, I saw, also declared for the NFL draft.
Yeah, an unbelievable talent for the Horns.
Foster Farms Bowl, fun game, actually. Purdue 38, Arizona 35.
A little bit of controversy before the half.
Yeah?
Yeah, the refs told Rich Rodriguez and the Arizona coaching staff that Purdue would be kneeling, and so for Arizona not to sort of rush the passer or, try to stop any sort of run, and they end up going with an end around before the half that sets up a pretty short field goal. Ultimately, Purdue wins by a field goal. And listen, Arizona was ahead in the second half. They were ahead in the fourth quarter. They were ahead with 3 minutes left in this game. So they did have the opportunity to win. But if all of that is true, it's a bummer for Arizona, who fought really well. And Purdue's, the story wasn't really Purdue's defense, as it had been for most of the year. Offensively, they spread the ball around nicely. Defensively, Khalil Tate exposed a lot of what Purdue was trying to do against him through the air. But good for Purdue. Really, this was not a Purdue team that I think anybody was expecting much from, even with the coaching change. And took, I think, a pretty big step forward.
When comeback victories and the Purdue Boilermakers, Dan, when they merge as one, you know what we call that?
What's that?
We call that the Sindelarity.
Oh, I'll take it. I like that. Good job.
Elijah Sindelar showing some cojones with a 38-yard touchdown pass with like a minute and 44 left. Gave him a win. Nice win. Nice win. First winning record since 2011.
Boiler up.
And finally, 2 final games here. New Era Pinstripe Bowl goes to Iowa 27-20 over Boston College. And the Walk-Ons Independence Bowl goes to Florida State, who ran one up on Southern Miss 42-13.
Indeed. Not much is needed about either one of those games.
Daniel, there you have it for bowl season. Wow.
What was your favorite bowl game to watch? I don't know if you have the scoreboard in front of you. Do you have a favorite? Was it Texas A&M Wake Forest 55-52? Was it?
Well, let's count out. Let's assume that the best one was the Rose Bowl.
I think that's right.
The Rose Bowl is the best one. Beyond that, and maybe I'm biased, I thought Penn State Washington was a ton of fun.
Yeah, for a game to legitimately be up in the air, and there was probably a solid 3/4 of a second when Dante Pettis got the lateral on the hook and ladder, where you, knowing what Chris Peterson has, where you said in the depths of your gut, oh shit. It had to have been in your mind somewhere.
Oh yeah, well, it was totally there.
Yeah. So
I thought that was a fun game.
Yeah, I think that's all right. I'm trying to see if any of the non-New Year's Day. I mean, I think Purdue-Arizona is a good answer. That was a really fun game. And
TCU-Stanford was a good game. Kind of came down to the wire too.
I think that's right.
Good bowl season as a whole. We will report on who ends up winning our bowl pool as soon as we know. We won't know that until after the game on Monday. Again, your national championship game is going to be between Alabama and Georgia. Monday night, January the 8th. Alabama, 4.5-point favorite over the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, we are going to be in Atlanta. As we said at the top of the show, as we've said for many shows now, we're going to be doing a live show later on Saturday evening. If you're able to join us, if you have questions, just go on out to our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram, our webpage. Don't be afraid to look us up at solidverbal@gmail.com. Tickets are still for sale. If you're interested in coming, you can find that link pretty much everywhere. And Lord knows if you got questions, feel free to give us a holler. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
The other thing that we should add is that we will be doing a live broadcast from College Football Media Day.
This is
earlier in the day, courtesy of our friends over at Facebook. We will be the special guest hosts if you tune into the college football playoffs, Facebook Sports Set coverage of Media Day. So we're going to be talking to Alabama coaches and players, going to be talking to Georgia coaches and players, going to get some questions from the community, going to have some fun of our own. It'll be lighthearted. It'll be fun. We'll try to mix in some informative stuff. Basically, whatever you're used to here on The Verbal, we're going to try and bring that to live video format, courtesy of our friends over at Facebook. So I'm excited for that as well.
No, it'll be fun. We're going to play some games. We'll talk about the game. I think we're going to do some learning about human beings, Ty.
Totally.
I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, pay attention to that. Honestly, I'm a little bit concerned that you're going into this weekend. We have a long preview show. We have Facebook Sports at Media Day, and we have to get you with a healthy larynx.
Oh my God.
To Switch Yards downtown, 6 to 8 p.m. Get your tickets on, where should people go to get their tickets?
Solidverbal.com, Facebook.com, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm worried about your voice. So just treat it like the instrument that it is.
I will do my best here. It's not as bad as it sounds. It may be worse,
okay.
But I will be in good working order by the time Saturday rolls around, I promise.
Okay, fair enough.
Daniel, I think this is where I leave you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been a treat.
Feel free to tune back in a little bit later on in the week when we drop our official National Championship Preview pod. In the meantime, for that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, and myself, Ty Hildenbrand, here, a little worse for the wear, but we'll come back strong in a few days. Enjoy the rest of your week and stay solid.
Peace.